Good day, everybody. This is Louie coming at you. I did a video yesterday, but I never published it. Now I'm glad I didn't because I've got some information here that I want to get out. But this is something I ran across when I went to work last night. It's an article. I don't know if you can read it, but it says, New York lawmakers to make prison visits amid push for justice roadmap and COVID vaccinations. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to comment on places that really bothered me. State legislatures seeking a close-up view of how the pandemic affects prisoners and the people who house them plan to start a series of unannounced visits to New York correctional institutions this weekend, the first such tour since the COVID crisis began. If they were that concerned about COVID, they would have done it before this. It's been almost a year since COVID hit our shores. Actually, it has been a year since COVID hit our shores. Senator Julia Salazar, she's a Democrat out of Brooklyn, the new chair of the Senate Corrections Committee, and Assemblywoman Carmen de la Rosa, who is a Democrat out of Harlem, will tour an upstate facility on Saturday as they urge officials to speed up vaccinations for inmates and call for the passage of legislative packages dubbed the Justice Roadmap. Now, first off, let's talk about this Justice Roadmap. Where's the justice for the citizens of the state? That's all I'm asking at this point. Salazar said the visits will give lawmakers a chance to see firsthand how prisons are handling the coronavirus amid a recent spike in infections. That's a good thing. I don't mind the fact that they're coming to do tours. It's great for them to come and see what's going on inside these prisons, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what's happening, okay? And one of the misconceptions is these poor guys who are in prison are being maltreated. That's not what's happening, all right? In fact, these guys, these people that are in prison, men and women, actually have more rights than the state of New York citizens do, the ones who are obeying the laws, who are trying to live a decent life, all right? So it's a good thing that they're going to go through. Maybe they'll see what's going on and fix it the right way. I doubt it, but we'll see. And the reason I doubt it is because of what's coming up in this. The tours will also allow legislatures to refine their argument for passing a slate of bills centering around criminal justice reforms that could overhaul parole, legalize marijuana, and end solitary confinement and some court fees, she said. I don't know much about the court fees. Legalizing marijuana is a bad idea. And overhauling parole? Really? The wrong people get out right now. And if they overhaul it, more of the wrong people will be getting out. Ending solitary confinement. That one bothers me. And I'll tell you why. Solitary confinement, I worked in the SHU, which is solitary confinement. I worked in it. The individuals that spend time in there are the ones who cannot get along in the rest of the prison system. They're the ones who break those more serious rules. They're the ones who are attacking other inmates, attacking officers, doing drugs, raping, and everything else. They're the ones that are going in there. They're the ones that are throwing urine and feces and other bodily fluids on to other people. These are not the grade A individuals that the state seems to think they are. They're not, okay? We don't put them in the SHU just because they got a paper cut. We don't put them in the SHU because they threw paper on the ground. They go to the SHU for serious offenses. To continue, we've gotten a sort of mixed information from Department of Corrections Community Supervision and just reports from the inside, Salazar told the Daily News. So I think it'll be really meaningful for myself and other legislators to see firsthand the conditions in the facilities. The conditions in the facilities. The only conditions that we have a problem with in the facilities is overcrowding. When you can put 300 to 400 people in one cell block, that's overcrowding. And we're going to continue having problems with overcrowding as long as they keep continuing to close prisons. Throughout February, several legislators are planning visits to a series of state prisons, jails, and federal immigration detention facilities as part of a push by groups including Center for Community Alternatives and New York Communities for Change. Marv Mayfield, the statewide organizer for the Center for Community Alternatives, said the visits will be a positive step toward passing reforms. The reforms we need are not the reforms they're seeking. The reforms we need is for the inmates, the ones who have been convicted of their crimes. Now, we're not talking about speeding violations here, people. We're talking about serious felonies. And these individuals who are being convicted of these serious felonies are individuals who don't give two rats about the law. They don't care about the law. They're out there doing what they do because that's what they want to do. It is particularly powerful for me as someone who has spent time behind the walls to see legislators making these visits to their incarcerated constituents, Mayfield said. There's no worse feeling than sitting in a cage at the mercy of someone who does not care if you live or die. What kind of nonsense is that? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you every CO is a good person. I can't do that. That would be like saying every lion is not going to attack you. That's just not, you can't do that. However, from my experience of 20 plus years, more COs care than don't. More COs will go out of their way to make sure an inmate is healthy, is fed, and has the mental hygiene that is necessary to get them through. Now, most of the inmates want to do their time and get out. There are a select few who are in there who decide they want to create havoc and chaos. Okay? Those are the ones that we spend a lot of time with trying to settle down so that we don't have an incident where somebody gets hurt. This doesn't care if you live or die. If we didn't care about whether they live or die, we wouldn't spend so much time trying to get these inmates who are trying to create chaos settled down. These prison visits show that our lives matter too. Their lives have always mattered. The state has coddled them for decades. The Justice Roadmap package includes a host of measures such as long-stalled human alternatives to long-term solitary confinement, or HALT Act, which could dramatically curtail the use of solitary confinement in the state. You know, if you could find a way to straighten an individual's behavior out without solitary confinement for their more serious offenses, then great. But let's not get rid of solitary confinement, because sometimes that's all that works. It also covers the state's renewed efforts to legalize adult use marijuana and a pair of bills that would grant parole to eligible people in prison unless they pose a clear risk of violating the laws, and allow inmates over 55 who have served 15 years or more of their sentence to apply for parole. Other bills deal with raising the age of juvenile delinquency and ending predatory court fees. Predatory court fees. All right, well, let's think about that for a minute. You've heard the cliche, money talks, bullshit walks. So I'm going to ask you, if someone you know and love has committed a crime, and it's a jailable crime where bail is necessary to get them out of jail so that they can participate in their legal defense, you put up that money for that bail, with the knowledge that if they don't show up for court, you're going to lose it. Okay? Some cases, people put their homes, take a second mortgage out for some of these. So if you know you're going to lose your home, if this individual that you bailed out doesn't show up for court, are you going to make sure they show up for court? I would. These legal fees that they charge, I firmly believe if you're found innocent, you shouldn't have any legal fees. That's just me, though. Okay? But if you're found guilty, shouldn't you be forced to pay these fees? Wouldn't that be a deterrent to prevent committing more crimes? It just makes sense to me. Senator Gustavo Rivera, Democrat from the Bronx, the sponsor of the Fair and Timely Parole Act, will join colleagues in a visit late next month. It'll be an opportunity to see things kind of unvarnished, to see what the reality is as much as we can, he said. These surprise visits are meant for us to bring attention to the justice roadmap, but also as legislators to be able to kind of witness things firsthand and bring attention to the condition of people who are behind bars. You know, that's all fine and dandy, and it sounds good on paper. But the thing is you can't do just one walkthrough and see what's going on. I suggest these legislatures throw on a uniform and walk the beat. Do it for 6 months to a year and see what really goes on. And I'll tell you what, when they get done, they will have a completely different idea of what happens when you work in a prison, what you see in a prison. Since the pandemic began, the state has granted early release to 3,557 individuals, spokesman Thomas Maley said. In all, 791 individuals who have had their low-level parole violations canceled, and 2,754 individuals who committed nonviolent, non-sex offenses and were within 90 days of their approved release date, and 12 women who were pregnant or had just given birth were released. You know, that's all fine and dandy, but the thing is, just because their crimes are nonviolent doesn't mean they haven't committed violent crimes. It only means that they didn't get caught doing a violent crime. Non-sex offenses, well, let's face it, sometimes when a sex offense is committed, it isn't reported. Maley also commended Governor Cuomo for being at the forefront of some of the nation's most progressive criminal justice reforms and reducing the prison population by more than 23,000 to 33,461 during his tenure in office. Let's talk about that decrease. Okay? When you change laws so that people don't get incarcerated, you're not having a lower crime. The same things are still happening. When you reduce prison populations, that's all fine and dandy. But at the same time, you're still releasing criminals who don't deserve being released when they are getting released back on the streets for them to commit more crimes. The only difference between some of these criminals who are being released and a law-abiding citizen is they're not getting caught. I don't like where New York State's going. I don't like the fact that they're listening to an individual who has a one-sided perception of what goes on inside a prison. And I'm referring to Marvin Mayfield. Marvin Mayfield was an inmate. Somehow he worked his way up the ladder into the state legislature system. And they're listening to him, which is fine. They can listen. There are some things that need to be changed. I'm not going to deny that. But the things that are being changed are not the things that need to be changed. And the things that they are changing in the wrong way. When something's not broke, you don't fix it. The system we have isn't broke. It's bent, but it isn't broke. And instead of doing what they need to do, which is fine-tune it, they're trying to replace it. It's going to cost taxpayers a whole ton load of money, and it's not, and what they're doing is not going to work. I know this because they have made a lot of drastic changes, and none of it has worked. In fact, it's become more chaotic. During the time I was quarantined, They had 4 officers get attacked and a 6-man fight in the mess hall. When I first started this, you didn't hear of fights in the mess hall very often because of the fact that they were afraid, the inmates were afraid you would dump gas. Now they don't care. I read another article earlier today talking about Attica and the camera system. And they were trying to claim that COs were writing false misbehavior reports about staff assaults and everything else. And they were looking at it from the aspect that the COs were unable to write these false tickets because of the cameras. Not once did it mention that because of the cameras, the inmates have thought different about their behaviors. Again, I can't say every CO is a good person. I can't do that. But I can say that the majority, the high 90 percentile, 99.9% of them are. We've got a few bad ones, but in every organization, whether it be law enforcement or lawyers or doctors or even store clerks, you know, you're going to get a few bad ones. You can't help that. It just happens. Not everybody is on the up and up. So you're going to get a few bad ones. But for the most part, there's nothing but good. And I'm going to tell you right now, the way New York State's going with their criminal justice system, pretty soon, you're going to be able to do every violent crime you want, and not once will you ever have to worry about going to court or going to prison. Because that's the direction we're headed. I know that sounds like an exaggeration. I know it. But I see it coming. All right, well, this is getting to be quite the long video. So I'm going to cut it short, or cut it off now. Y'all have a good day.